show and tell show with our very special guest, Tom Kemp. Tom Kemp is the executive director of Cal Privacy. And before this role, he was or is a Silicon Valley-based tech entrepreneur, a co-founder, and a CEO. He was a full-time volunteer on the 2020 campaign to pass the CPRA Act, so the California Privacy Rights Act, and has since advised on significant tech policy legislation across the country, including the DELETE Act, the AI Transparency Act, and bills in Texas, Nebraska, Vermont, and Washington. And on top of all of that, he found time to also write a book, which you can read. Or I'm going to try to give it. It's called Containing Big Tech. My copy is not yet autographed, so the next time I see you, Tom, I would really love your signature on this. But today we're not here to talk about the book. We are here to talk about California's very first of its kind, newly launched delete, request, and opt-out platform called Drop, along with some other things on the horizon for California consumers. So here's how we're going to spend the next 25, 30 minutes or so today. Tom and I are going to have a chat for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then that period will be recorded and we'll provide some links later on. And then we're going to turn off the recording and open it up to audience Q&A. So what you could do as an audience member is type your question in and then Ryan will speak that for you. All right. As a reminder to everyone in this session, this webinar is for general purposes only, educational purposes, informational purposes. None of this is legal advice. None of this is regulatory advice. If you need legal advice, please talk to your own lawyer and get your own help. This is just for education. All right, with all of that behind us, Tom, are you ready to hop in?
I am ready to hop in.
Okay, sounds great. My first question to you, Tom, is I'm curious about your path to Cal Privacy. We heard you were a tech CEO and you've done a lot of volunteer work on legislation. And I'm curious what inspires you to do this work?
Absolutely. And thanks again for having me on. And hello, everyone. Appreciate you carving out a half hour to listen to us. And so what inspired me was I've historically been an entrepreneur, was CEO, as Mary mentioned, of a cybersecurity company. And so definitely have a great appreciation for protecting data, including personal information from unauthorized access, but also really started thinking a lot, 10 years ago or so about the governance of personal information. And my company got to a size and scale that in 2018, we actually had to go through GDPR compliance itself. So it's probably interesting that I'm probably one of the few regulators that actually had to go through the regulatory process themselves. And then that led me in 2020 to volunteer for Prop 24, the California Privacy Rights Act. In effect, there was only like 3 or 4 of us on the campaign. I was the chief marketing officer. So also got a great appreciation for evangelizing privacy to consumers. So I've always believed in the mission of Cal Privacy that was created by Prop 24, the California Privacy Rights Act. And then, furthermore, when this opportunity became available, I thought, given my past leadership skills of being a CEO, my knowledge of cybersecurity and privacy would add value. The fact that I work closely with members of the California legislature to help pass in an advisory role legislation such as the DELETE Act and an AI Transparency Act that Mary alluded to as well. I thought that would put me in a good position to be productive. And then finally, kind of the one key bit of inspiration is in 2023, I wrote an article in Tech Policy Press called "Let's Make Privacy Easy." I really think that as Professor Salov says, that oftentimes exercising privacy rights is a never-ending set of chores, and I really wanted to streamline the ability for consumers to exercise privacy, while at the same time making privacy easier for businesses to meet their obligations. And so this also is an opportunity in this role to streamline privacy, enable privacy at scale, and enable for businesses and consumers to be able to operationalize privacy.
Oh, wow. I love to hear that. Let's make privacy easy. That actually leads right into my very next question, Tom, which is about the delete request and opt-out platform, the drop platform. I'm assuming that's to make privacy easy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what problems it solves?
Yeah, so the delete request and opt-out platform, or drop, is a free online tool available to Californians that basically gives them, in effect, a single click mechanism to initiate a deletion request and an opt out request to the hundreds of data brokers that are registered in the state of California. The legislation itself was passed in 2023. It was authored by State Senator Becker, who's actually my local state senator, and I've known him through the years, and he's very receptive to ideas. And I proposed this to him. It's not an original idea, and he said, "Oh, this is a great idea." So it passed in 2023. It was signed by Governor Newsom, and it called for this accessible deletion mechanism to do what the drop. So the drop system is not something that we did in isolation. It actually was done something based on legislation that I also had the opportunity to work and advise on as well. And I'm very pleased to say that as of this morning, this is late breaking news for the listeners, that in what's today, the 13th, and so in 31 plus 13, 40 days or so, we've had over 225,000 signups for the drop. And so if you are a Californian, please tell your friends, neighbors, or yourself, go to privacy.ca.gov/drop and check it out. And one thing I'll point out is that this system itself is not paid for by the taxpayers and Californians. It's actually paid for via the registration fees that the data brokers have. And as of last year, we exited the year at 545 data brokers that were registered. We just completed the registration process. You still, if you're data brokers, you should register. We can certainly talk about being late with the January 31st deadline. And we will be rolling out the actual data broker registry and making it publicly accessible for this new year in the coming weeks. So that's the Delete Act in a nutshell.
Oh, that's so exciting. I actually just quoted someone yesterday on the 545 number, so I can't wait to see the new actual data broker list in the next couple weeks. I'm curious if it will have a lot more data brokers on that, so we'll have to have you come back and give us an update.
I know the answer, but we'll
So,
wait for
hold,
we'll wait to reveal that. So
keep the
I gave
suspense.
exactly
Keep the
exactly.
suspense alive. I actually had I'm not from California. I'm from Illinois, but I did have the opportunity to go through that system because I was on a Zoom with a California resident and went through the process, and it was very straightforward. I'd love to see it as an app, just so you know, in some future state. But I'm curious, what was the most surprising thing that you encountered when you were creating this platform? Any surprises that you couldn't give us a behind the scenes on?
Um, well, I think the big surprise. I have a couple things. As I alluded to before, this is not an original idea, but it's the first implementation of the idea. Senator Wyden had some proposals like 5, 10 years ago. Tim Cook wrote an editorial in 2019 and that was published in Time magazine that called for a data broker clearinghouse with a similar deletion mechanism. There was a federal proposal by Senators Cassidy and Ossoff. One's a Republican, one's a Democrat. So it has bipartisan support. When this bill passed, there was actually a Republican that did vote for it in California, and it passed overwhelmingly in the both houses of the legislature here as well. So this is the first and only implementation of this idea. And there wasn't any surprises about actual building the platform. We're very thrilled to have a great team that built it. We partnered with the California Department of Technology. But probably the biggest or the only surprise was that we purposely, didn't want to go too crazy in terms of promoting it because we just didn't know if, bugs would be shaken out and all that stuff. So I don't want to use the expression soft launch, but we decided to not have the marketing kick in and the big social presence until March and beyond. But what happened out of the gate was there was such interest in this that the numbers have exceeded our expectations. So that's been the biggest surprise. The other thing I'll point out is that oftentimes what we've heard from journalists and bloggers that have written about this, again, this is all organic that people have done, is that people have came back and said, oh, I wrote an article on this, and this was the most read article that I've had in the last year, which tells me that we are matching the pain point that's out there. And then there's just a significant demand for a solution such as this. So maybe it's just the overwhelming response is probably the biggest surprise that we've had.
Yeah, I love to see that. So you started off saying you wanted to make privacy easy for both California consumers and for businesses. So I'm curious, what should companies that are trying to figure out how to comply with the drop, be thinking about? What are some important deadlines that you can remind us of? Can you remind us again who enforces this, what the penalties are, how we can make it easier for companies?
Yeah, so it's interesting that in California for the CCPA, which the CPR amended um, with Prop 24, that it's dual enforcement. So it's the Attorney General that enforces the CCPA as well as our agency, Cal Privacy. In the case of the Delete Act, the enforcement is rest with our agency itself. And historically, the enforcement actions that we've taken have been involving the failure to register. And every so often we come out with press releases. I think we're over 10 public announcements of settlements with entities that haven't registered. So clearly the first recommendation is if you are a data broker and haven't registered, you need to register now via the registration portal on our website. And fines can add up. Data brokers can be fined $200 a day for every day they don't register. But here's the deal: that come August, so the big deadline. I mean, the first big deadline was having the system live January 1st for consumers. The next big deadline is August 1st, where the data brokers have to access the system, do the matching of the hashed information that the consumers have with their data that they hash themselves, and then they do the matching itself. And failure to properly implement that and see through the deletions, the fines are $200 per day per incident. So imagine, and this is not a projection, but imagine that come August 1st, there's a 500,000 Californians in the system, and you're a data broker, and maybe 200,000 of the consumers that have entered are in your system. And for some reason you decide to blow this off, then it's $200,000 times 200 per day. So the fines can be very significant. And I should point out, failure to register doesn't get you off the hook for not doing the deletions. So that is kind of the big stick that should motivate people to really look to see if they meet the definition of a data broker under the statute, and they should further review our regulations. Now, what's happening in between now and August 1st is we will be opening up a sandbox that will allow data brokers to actually test the API to pull the hashed information. They can test out in the sandbox environment the matching capabilities, and we will provide tech support for consumers. And then the next deadline after the 45-day deletion period starting in August is that it's required that their data brokers get audited in 2028. And this summer, we'll start the process of defining the regulations for the data broker audit under DROP.
Fantastic. I'm super excited to hear about that sandbox. I wasn't aware of it, so we'll keep our eyes peeled
Yeah.
for when that's available. Did you say there's over 200,000 consumers that
No, no,
are registered?
well, today there's, as of this morning, there's over 225,000 Californians that have entered their information into DROP.
And it was the soft launch. So I'm actually curious between now and then August, how are you planning to get the word out more broadly, if at all, to get that number up? I don't even know how high it could go. Maybe everybody in California.
Yeah, I mean,
What's the
obviously,
plan?
it really depends. I mean, some of this stuff goes viral, right? And so we've seen one instance in which someone on, I think, Instagram had over 2.8 million views of their little snippet on Drop itself. And so we have been very pleased with the organic interest in Drop. As I said before, we didn't start advertising day one. We said, look, let's make sure everything's okay. And the good news is everything has worked swimmingly well, right? And it's great to hear that you looked over someone's shoulder to have them go through the process. And some people, some journalists said it took me 4 minutes. NBC Bay Area, the reporter said it took him 8 minutes. So that's kind of the time frame. But the value proposition, of course, is under normal circumstances, if you try to manually do it, it may take 20 to 30 minutes per data broker to research it, figure out how to do it, maybe respond to, going back and forth. And then you multiply that, say, 20 minutes per reach out times over 500. That's actually 10 days worth of work, right? And this claps everything down to 8. And the other thing is it's a permanent deletion. So if under CCPA, people could repopulate the data and you would have to make the request again. So the nice thing is that getting the word out, it just organically happened. We've had, podcast, journalists, et cetera, and they've had significant engagement. And then we're also trying to get out to the community here in California. We've been participating in senior scam stopper events with some of our sister agencies here in California. So I've actually gone to senior citizen homes and told people about Drop, and seniors are super excited because they seem to be very much targeted, and they don't understand how people are getting their phone numbers, their emails. They don't understand how people call them and claim that they know or are their granddaughter in North Carolina or something like that. Unfortunately, one thing that does happen on occasion is that data from data brokers is utilized by scammers and people trying to conduct identity theft, identity fraud as well. So yeah, expect in the near future, if you live in California, hopefully you'll actually start seeing the paid advertising that happens. But everything we've done has really just been organic, and we're very pleased with that. So yeah, hopefully that. And then the last thing is we also kind of expected that people may not sign up until the August deadline, but it seems that people are so interested in this and want it that they're perfectly fine signing up for now and kind of getting in the system and not have to worry about it later. So I would encourage everyone just to go ahead and do it. It only takes a few minutes if
Yeah.
you're a Californian.
I can
So,
attest to that. Just like Tom said, looking over the shoulder of a California is very simple to do. Okay, I have one last question for you, Tom,
okay.
before we open it up to audience Q&A. So start thinking about your questions, folks. Last year, Governor Newsom signed the California Opt Me Out Act, which goes into effect in 2027. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what's on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, so this kind of falls under the theme of let's make privacy easy. That, currently today, that if you wanted to tell companies that you directly interact with, that you have to go to their website, you scroll to the bottom, you start playing around with the cookies, or, do not sell, share my information if you're in California and all that stuff. And that just takes a lot of time and effort. And luckily, there has been an initiative called Global Privacy Control. Our implementation, we call it here in California, OOPS, the opt-out preference signal. And it's great. It tells businesses not to sell or share your personal information. The issue is that while there is availability of some browser extensions on like Google Chrome on Windows or Edge on Windows, that people had to manually do it. It wasn't built into the browser, and most people don't feel comfortable adding an extension. A lot of people do, or just aren't aware of that. The second thing is that browsers on mobile don't even allow third-party extensions to be added. Now, I should be very clear, there are a set of browsers that do support this, but they tend to have lower market share than the more popular browsers out there. So what this bill would require starting January 1st, 2027, to make sure that all browser vendors have to support this as part of the core feature capability of the browser itself.
Oh, I love to hear that. And let me just plant a little bug in your ear. Let's think about broadening that to even like apps, devices, and get that opt-out experience no matter how anybody accesses the internet. Okay, that wraps up the interview portion of today. We're going to go ahead and turn off the recording.